In 1941, the last surviving Jews of Vilna, Lithuania, were imprisoned in the Vilna ghetto, a ghetto that was surrounded by walls and that encompassed an area of only 7 streets. Robbed of their homes, their businesses, and their rich culture, they would provide slave labor to the Germans for the next 2 years. The memories of this lost world are poignantly portrayed in the paintings of Samuel Bak, a child survivor of this bleak period of history. Through his images, the lost world of his childhood is memorialized in a classical style that is uniquely his own, combining elements of surrealism with allegorical and metaphysical imagery. He presents the unspeakable horrors that a child has had to witness. Known as the Jerusalem of the North before the war, Vilna was a hub of Jewish cultural and religious life and home to hundreds of Jewish social, religious, cultural, and scientific organizations. As a center of enlightenment, they welcomed intellects, poets, authors, artists, and musicians. But that community, on the eve of Shoah, was about to disappear. During the summer of 1941, German troops, along with Lithuanian collaborators, killed more than 35,000 Jews living in Vilna in a rapid extermination program. On September 1941, the Nazis herded the remaining Jews into the 2 ghettos nearby. Among the prisoners would be 8-year-old Samuel Bak, who, along with his family, relatives, neighbors, and friends, were herded into this temporary holding center. The original occupants of this ancient Jewish area had already been executed in the woods nearby. Now it was time for the next group of Jews to await their own fate. Now those old occupants lay dead in mass graves in the pits of the Ponari forest. The remaining 20,000 Jews of Vilna would take their place for the next 2 years.
I remember everything that from age, I would say, 3. I remember lots of things. It's like, a kind of a cinema that I can view things. Of course, memory is never 100% perfect, and we know that memory is always a kind of a reconstruction. And I remember the world where I lived when I was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the war bill, the ghetto, everything.
I was my parents' firstborn child and the first grandson of 4 doting grandparents, members of a well-established Jewish community that since the 15th century had been part of this city's story. My parents, my loving family, and their friends made me believe that the world in which I lived was enshrined in a state of imperishable security, comfort and happiness. Menacing clouds on a darkening sky and sounds of ominous thunder were for adults only.
That world came to an abrupt end when the 8-year-old was put into a holding center called the Vilna Ghetto. As with every Jewish ghetto slated for ultimate liquidation, daily survival was not easy. While the young and able were temporarily employed as slave laborers, the weak, the old, and the children were at high risk. And it was through the coveted work permit that allowed you and selected family members a short lease on life. At the Vilna Ghetto, the young Samuel was lucky to find a group of Vilna's top actors, writers, and musicians. Through their support and encouragement, the 9-year-old was recognized as the child protege.
They had some excellent actors, and it wasn't even easy to get to the theater. But I was a little star in the ghetto, so I was considered a little Mozart of the ghetto. I mean, I had an exhibition in the ghetto when I was 9 years of age, so I could always get into the theater. There was always a seat for me. So.
In his highly acclaimed memoir, Painted in Words, Samuel Bak recalls his life in all its stages. A family friend, a noted poet, advised his parents to encourage the young boy to pursue a career in the arts.
When he saw my drawings I did when I was about 3 or 4 years of age, saying, "This child is a painter. Don't bother him with anything else. Art, art, art has to be his food, his bread. Kunst, Kunst und Kunst." This was Arno Nadel's order. Arno Nadel died in Auschwitz. He was among the very last Jews sent from Berlin to Auschwitz. So to this poet I certainly owe the fact that I was always considered not a future doctor, not a future lawyer, but a future artist. And this was not a simple thing for a Jewish family, because to be an artist did not mean that you would have any success or you will be able to take care of a family.
Encouraged by a notable from the Vilna Ghetto, Samuel was given a book to record his drawings.
Called the Pinkas. The Pinkas was an 18th century book that belonged to the Jewish community, where the names of the various organizations, and I made drawings in the book, and that book survived somehow the bombing of the ghetto. It was found by partisans. It had blood on its cover. And the poet Kaczergiński, who told me about it, I was then 10 years of age, and said, "Look, we have found your Pinkas." He said, "I will show it to you." I said, "I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it." I was afraid of that book. But that book was later part of the National Museum of Lithuania, and they gave it back to the Jewish Museum in Vilna, and there it is exhibited.
While it's impossible to fathom the annihilation of 1 million children, in Bak's later paintings, the symbol of lost childhood is portrayed through the boy of the Warsaw Ghetto.
To me, this boy is an image of the Jewish crucifixion. And it goes beyond the Jewish crucifixion. It is a child that becomes a victim of an unbearable situation. And this boy, on one hand, reminds me very much the way I was when I was in the ghetto of Vilna. I had the same age, I had the same little coat. I had always bare legs with one of the socks that was sliding down. And I very much identify with this boy. And I very much identify in this boy my very best friend, my childhood friend, who had my name. He was called Samuel or Samek, the way I was called Samek. And this boy did not survive. Unfortunately, he was found by some Germans, and the SS shot him and left him in his blood to serve as a warning.
When it became obvious that all the children in the ghetto were about to be executed, Samuel was hidden and later smuggled out of the ghetto in a burlap sack carried by his father. Jonas Bak did not survive. So was it a miracle or chance that enabled Samuel Bak to survive?
Yeah, I use sometimes the word miracle. I'm not using it very much now because it was a chance. Yeah, quite extraordinary mother, and my mother also had an aunt that helped us a lot. The tragedy of my great-grandfather was that one of his daughters was kind of kidnapped by Polish aristocracy and converted to Catholicism, and he said shiva for her. But this is exactly what saved me, because then my mother had an aunt that was living on the other side of the world, and she was able to help us. So we survived certainly thanks to these Polish aristocrats who kidnapped my great aunt, and so we speak of miracles.
That more than 1 million children perished during the Holocaust and the 9-year-old Samuel survived is nothing short of a miracle, but Bak sees it as a game of chance.
It's a game theory. I mean, it's what are the factors that enable certain things. I mean, even if you have a very brave mother, and even if you have one Christian, there's still no guarantee. I mean, your chances are increased by that. But some people survived without. I mean, a famous writer, Appelfeld, saw his mother being killed and survived by himself in the woods. So.
But more than 75,000 Jews did not have that chance. Driven into the Ponar woods nearby by the Nazis along with their Lithuanian collaborators, they met their final end.
At its final liquidation in September of '43, transported to the HKP or HKP labor camp in Supoc. Undeniably, the Shoah, the final solution, was in full implementation. Miraculously, when the Soviets returned to Vilnius almost a year before war's end, Mother and I emerged alive from our last hiding place. We counted among the 5% of the pre-war Jewish population of Vilnius that was among the living. Jerusalem of Lithuania was no more. We fled Stalin's paradise by the skin of our teeth and ended up in Poland. A refugee camp in Bavaria awaited us. Finally, in 1948, we found shelter in the Jerusalem of Israel. When I arrived to Israel, I was a boy of 15. My then Litvak roots were fully formed. I lived among survivors. My Hebrew, newly acquired, never lost its Yiddish tone. We were the keepers of a world which the Nazis and their collaborators destined to annihilation. Our culture, shaken, mourning its irreparable loss, licking its wound, lived on in us. We subsisted in the Yiddish we spoke, in the books we read, and in the values we shared with the ones who were from our special galaxy. We weren't the best material for a new land. A young painter, I began to seek the artistic forms. Soon I realized how deeply Vilnius was etched into my soul. At first, I searched its special aura in the narrow and dark streets of Paris. Then I looked for it in the back alleys of Rome. In the end, I found the spirit of my magical birth town in my own paintings. Paintings packed with what the eyes of a boy of Vilnius had perceived when he discovered his real world. And since most of the authentic images of the Shoah were chilling, dehumanizing, and foreboding, I chose to evoke them metaphorically. So were created my icons of destruction, my representations of partial mending, my symbols of survival and resilience. All rendered in a painting technique that seemed remote, timeless. It doesn't menace. Let the ones who understand, understand. For many years I thought that I would never return to the city of my birth. But that wasn't to be. Something important happened. Around the year 2000, Rimantas Stankevičius came to the US. He was a counselor at the Senate of Lithuania. He had been researching life stories of righteous Christians who, against all odds, saved the Jews. He knew that I owed my miraculous survival to their heroic courage. Rimantas' visit was a turning point in my life. A brotherly friendship was born. My old reluctance disintegrated. Consequently, 56 years after my dramatic escape from Soviet city, I returned to the Lithuanian capital, Vilnius. My visit was followed by an important exhibition of mime art, then came other visits, often with close members of my family. Wonderful visit, and each one very special. But the emotion of the present one, and I'm speaking here of course of November 15, is unlike anything I have ever experienced. Let me explain. I am at an age in which most of my future is behind my back. And I can happily smile because I was very lucky. My art is appreciated, it provides me with a decent living and allows me to create in full liberty. It has granted me prizes, awards, and honorary doctorates, wonderful recognitions of achievement. But whenever such events happened, whenever I had to acknowledge my elation and announce my humility, I felt alone. Not so today. Today, by accepting this honorary citizenship, I have a keen feeling that the whole crowd surrounds me. I am not humble. My father, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, and the huge multitude of faceless Jews of old Vilnius, a third of the city's population, whose lives were cut short, and now rest in the woods of Ponari. All of them are here at my side. And all are proud of their boy. All are delighted with the exceptionality of this event. It is for their sake that I have donated to the Lithuanian state a large collection of my artistic output. It is to their memory that I dedicate the Bak Museum. I am infinitely grateful to all the ones who have tirelessly labored to make it happen. It wasn't an easy ride and it took time, but the result is a dream come true. So this is...